Chapter 2244. I don't care. For the next week, Miss Luo Qingchen has to stay with me except during sleeping time. Yu Qianjin retracted his arms domineeringly. This is to prevent her from having too much contact with her admirers. Luo Qingchen couldn't help but chuckle. Okay. Actually, she wasn't compromising. She was just trying to reassure him. Just like how he desperately tried to prove his love for her on the tree-lined path on campus. Just like how he constantly prepared her for when he knew that he was going to meet the daughter of the Luo family. She knew how important she was in his heart, so she felt that such an unreasonable request wasn't bad. Early Monday morning, it started to snow lightly. The ground was white and the snowflakes on the side looked especially beautiful. She put on a limited edition Versace down jacket and walked into the school. Actually, she didn't usually wear luxury brands. Firstly, it was easy to expose her identity. Secondly, she didn't think that wearing them would raise her status. But today, she just wanted to wear them. After all, some people were looking forward to a big show. If she cooperated, it would make the climax even more interesting. Sure enough, as soon as she walked into class, Yi Sitian glanced at the door and slanted her lip. Oh, our commoner is actually wearing a limited edition in order to defeat Miss Daisy. Yi Sitian's sidekick said, Sister Sitian, what limited edition? It looks like a street vendor's item. What a disgrace. Yi Sitian's sidekick B continued, Isn't that so? She should take a look at her own status. I heard that the two families met at the Empire Hotel yesterday, and there was a row of luxury cars outside the hotel. Stop saying yes, you're so annoying. Mu Nanshi couldn't help but say, You won't die if you don't court death. Qingchen is still young Master Jin's girlfriend. I'm afraid you don't want to live anymore. TSK, this commoner, you're wrong. Yi Sitian shook her head. That's because your status is low, so you're ignorant. Yesterday, the two families already confirmed the engagement date. What girlfriend? Miss Daisy is young Master Jin's fiancée now. Perhaps because Yi Sitian's words were a little loud, the students in the class began to discuss it. Actually, I also heard that Miss Daisy and young Master Jin have already confirmed the engagement date. Wow! Isn't that Luo Qingchen very pitiful? It wasn't easy for a sparrow to become a phoenix. There's no other way. Although I think she's a pretty good person, the industry is like this. There's no place for her. At the same time, He Qingqing, who was wearing a white down jacket, walked in while clapping her hands. You? Yes, it's you, the student in the orange shirt. You're right. As soon as her voice fell, she looked at Luo Qingchen before continuing, Our circle can't hold you. I didn't think that He Qingqing classmate liked to watch the fun so much. Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed. She put her hands in her pockets and said with a cold smile, What? Haven't you been working on your magic potions lately? I think the identity of a witch is quite suitable for you. You! He Qingqing glared at her fiercely. She wanted to scold her, but she swallowed her anger and said with a cold smile, You're right, I like to watch the fun. And I like watching the fun with you. That's good. I was just worried that if you didn't come, this fun would miss the biggest climax. Luo Qingchen snorted coldly and turned to walk toward the class door. Chapter 2245. The school office wasn't far from the classroom. Yu Qianjin sent her a text message, asking if she wanted to accompany her to the school office. She replied with a few words, No need, wait for me in the classroom. Just watch the show. Inside the school office, the board of directors specially came, dressed neatly as they waited for her arrival. Standing on the left was the chemistry department's class teacher and the math teacher. They both had a smile on their faces as they stood there waiting. Until the moment Luo Qingchen opened the door, the math teacher's face instantly changed. With a dark face, he said, Students around, this is not a place you should be. Quickly leave. Teacher Chen Yuan, do you know who you are talking to? The vice president of the board of directors' face instantly sank. He glanced at the sign on his chest and said, "Starting tomorrow, you don't need to come to school to work." Vice President Chen Yuan's face was full of confusion. He hadn't completely recovered yet. He felt that he didn't say anything wrong. It wasn't like he didn't know this school. They even mocked him to his face, leaving a deep impression. "Miss Luo, President Luo already told me that you would be coming today. You can choose which class you want to go to," the vice president said respectfully with a smile. Standing to the side, Chen Yuan's eyes were about to fall out. What was going on? Wasn't this Luo Qingchen a commoner? How could she be a Miss Luo? Luo Qingchen faintly responded. She tied up her shoulder-length curly hair and smiled. "I'll go to class 1. After all, I'm very familiar with some of the teachers and students." When Chen Yuan heard this, his face instantly turned white. Even if he didn't understand the vice president's meaning at first, he now understood that the so-called commoner wasn't a commoner at all. She was the daughter of one of the 4 major families. However, when the math teacher called Chen Yuan recovered, Luo Qingchen had already left the school office. His legs went limp and he fell to the ground without any strength. Walking through the corridor of the school building, everyone's eyes fell onto Luo Qingchen at the same time. Some were surprised, some were puzzled, but it was completely silent. There wasn't even the sound of discussion. At the same time, He Qingqing was sitting beside Yi Sitian in the chemistry department's class 1 with a hint of arrogance in her eyes. What she had lost, that person would also lose today. At the same time, she couldn't help but look in Yu Qinjin's direction. He was still looking out of the window indifferently. His deep eyes were mesmerizing. It was as if he would be deeply intoxicated if he looked at it a few more times. "Stop looking, young Master Jin doesn't belong to us." Yi Sitian was still self-aware. She smiled and said, "But it's even more impossible for it to belong to that filthy commoner." You're right. I can't wait to see her embarrass herself." He Qingqing was in a state of excitement, looking forward to what would happen in a while. "Let me tell you, Luo Qingchen came alone today. Young Master Jin didn't accompany her at all. Young Master Jin wasn't here just now either, so he probably could have avoided her." Yi Sitian chuckled and continued, "Maybe they broke up a long time ago." Little did they know that Yu Qianjin, who was leaning against the window, was the first to speak up. This sentence actually made Yi Sitian and He Qingqing enter a state of excitement. "You're right. We're no longer boyfriend and girlfriend." His beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. There was a faint glimmer in them, and the corners of his mouth curved into an extremely faint smile. Chapter 2246. Mu Nanshi, who originally didn't want to say a word, was slightly stunned when she heard Yu Qianjin's words. Just as she was about to speak, Yu Qianjin gave her a look. Her eyes trembled, and she lowered her head in embarrassment. Sure enough, people who were too handsome couldn't resist a few more glances. Although Mu Nanshi wasn't interested in Yu Qianjin, a handsome man was still a handsome man. She couldn't help but take a few more glances. Besides, this was the first time she saw Yu Qianjin look at her with such eyes. It was normal for her to feel embarrassed. However, just because she didn't speak didn't mean that others didn't speak. He Qingqing, Yi Sitian, and Yi Sitian's little lackeys were all in an uproar. Almost in an instant, countless comments entered her ears, and some of them were unpleasant to hear. Ha 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 ha. He Qingqing's original gentle and pleasant image changed. After laughing a few times, she said, "I'm so happy." With young Master Jin's words, I believe everyone is as excited as I am. Yi Sitian covered her mouth and sneered, "What a pity! We probably won't have a chance to see Luo Qingchen's face. She was still pretending when she came to school this morning. It turns out she's already been abandoned. Isn't that so? She's just a dirty thing pretending to be. She didn't lose out. She received young Master Jin's love for so long. Unfortunately, a salted fish will always be a salted fish. She'll never be able to turn over a new leaf. Lu Qiufan, who was sitting on the side, frowned. He slowly put down the pen in his hand and softly said, "This is her private matter. What does it have to do with you?" Probably because their words were too unpleasant, Lu Qiufan couldn't help but open his mouth. After all, that was the person he used to like. Perhaps she was also the person he liked now. But young Master Jean said it himself. "Why can't we discuss it?" Yi Sitian snorted. Her tone wasn't as proud, but she wasn't very happy. Ever since Luo Qingchen came to this class, Alice's two most handsome male gods had been circling around her. Lu Qiufan was fine. After all, he was also a commoner. She could understand that the two of them cherished each other. However, she didn't understand why Yu Qianjin was so protective of her. Fortunately, the Prince Charming was still able to walk through a field of flowers without a single leaf touching him. Now that she was single again, Luo Qingchen had no backing at all. She wanted to see what she could use to pretend. "Yes, I said it myself. Does Student Lu have any objections?" Yu Qianjin narrowed his eyes. There was a hint of hostility in his eyes. As the saying went, many people liked your girlfriend because she was outstanding enough. He should be glad that she only belonged to him and no one else. However, for Yu Qianjin, it was different. He hoped that he was the only one in the world who liked her. He didn't need anyone else. The more outstanding a person was, the less he needed them. Although he was arrogant enough and had the right to be arrogant, his heart was still very soft. He was afraid of losing the millions of people in this world. He only wanted Luo Qingchen. Why would others want to snatch her away from him? Humph. Does it matter if I have an opinion or not? He snorted softly. There wasn't the slightest bit of fear in his dark eyes as he looked at Yu Qianjin. She made her choice long ago. She just chose the wrong person. You still say that you like her. You don't even believe in her taste. Yu Qianjin's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly. Actually, you have good taste. At least you made the same choice as me. It's just that her taste is better because she chose me. Chapter 2247. Lu Qiufan was a smart person, so she naturally understood the meaning behind Yu Qianjin's words. Although it was a mouthful, to put it simply, he was contradicting what he had said earlier. Weren't they no longer girlfriends? Why did Yu Qianjin still say that? Young Master Jean, since classmate Lu likes that filthy commoner so much, just let her be. Yi Sitian rolled her eyes and laughed. Anyway, they're well matched in terms of social status. In the next second, Yu Qianjin's cold gaze landed on Yi Sitian's body. His body seemed to be exuding an icy aura. As long as one looked into his eyes, they would shiver uncontrollably. Yi Sitian naturally felt it as well. She swallowed her saliva and said resentfully, "Young Master Jean, did I say something wrong?" "I don't think you're wrong." Lu Qiufan instantly answered Yi Sitian's question. There was a touch of determination in her indifferent gaze as she said, "As long as she's willing, I can protect her." Lu Qiufan, do you really not understand, or are you just pretending not to? Yu Qianjin frowned. He was obviously a little angry. His cold eyes swept over everyone who had just spoken ill of Lu Qingchen, and he said word by word, "Today, I'm telling you that she's mine in life and mine in death. No one can snatch her away, and no one can take her away." "But, young Master Jean, didn't you just say—" When Yi Sitian heard this, she leaned against He Qingqing in fear, her hands trembling slightly. At this moment, the class teacher walked in with a slightly pale face. "Everyone, don't quarrel. Our class will have a new classmate today." The class teacher took a deep breath and said with a nervous expression, "To everyone, she might not be considered a new classmate. But today, she'll be meeting everyone with a new identity." "Oh, that's right." In the next second, Yu Qianjin glanced at Lu Qiufan arrogantly and said, "When I said that we're no longer boyfriend and girlfriend, I should add another sentence." Everyone's gaze fell on Yu Qianjin, their eyes flickering with doubt. He continued, From now on, we're engaged. Everyone didn't seem to fully understand Yu Qianjin's words at this moment, but when the vice-chairman of the board of directors brought her into the classroom, they seemed to be even more confused. Class 1 students, this is our chairman Luo's daughter, Luo Qinchen. From today onwards, she will be studying at Alice Academy. The vice-chairman stood with his hands behind his back. You must take good care of your new classmate. As soon as his voice fell, he immediately turned to Luo Qinchen. Miss Luo, please come this way. The class's students immediately sucked in their breath. Before they could regain their senses, Yu Qianjin had already stood up, pulled her hand and walked towards the direction of the seat. Silence. 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 Right now, the classroom was so quiet that even the sound of a needle dropping on the floor could be heard clearly. No one dared to say a word. Yi Sitian and He Qingqing were completely dumbfounded. Their mouths were open, and they stood in place, not daring to move. When Luo Qinchen passed by them, her right hand habitually tapped on their desks and said, "How is it? This script isn't bad, right? Are you satisfied with the ending of this fairy tale?" You. Yi Sitian's eyes widened as she looked at her in horror, her voice trembling. Chapter 2248. That's impossible. In contrast, He Qingqing was able to speak, even though her face was pale and her eyes were filled with disbelief. But perhaps it was because she liked to deceive herself, so her first reaction was that it was absolutely impossible. Ha ha! Luo Qinchen narrowed her eyes before curling her lips into a smile. I really want to know what you mean by impossible? Don't tell me you want to come to my villa or my Luo Enterprises building. Who didn't know how to flaunt their wealth? This slap was really loud and clear. When she said this, Luo Qinchen could feel her blood boiling. It was probably because her identity that had been hidden for too long was revealed at this moment. When all the halos gathered on top of her head, she felt that she was full of momentum. How is that possible? He Qingqing bit her lips and struggled to quibble. How can Luo Qinchen be a rich young lady? She shook her head desperately, her whole body trembling uncontrollably. To her, this was like falling from heaven to hell. In just a moment, everything changed. She wanted to see Luo Qinchen become a joke. She wanted to see her get abandoned. She wanted to finally be able to wreak havoc on her head. But when all of this happened in an almost impossible way, she only felt that her heart was about to stop. Oh! In the next second, Luo Qinchen shrugged and smiled provocatively. It seems like you don't like the name Luo Qinchen. Or you can call me Daisy in the future. But you probably won't have that chance. Absolutely impossible. I must be dreaming. Wake up quickly, wake up quickly. Yi Sitian's reaction was different. Although her face was also pale and her voice couldn't help but tremble when she spoke. But the first thing she thought about was how to get rid of the relationship and how to flatter Luo Qinchen. Miss Daisy, no, Miss Luo. The corners of Yi Sitian's mouth twitched, revealing an extremely awkward and ugly smile. I'm not with her. I'm just a member of young Master Jin's fan club. I have nothing to do with any magic potions. Tisk. Everyone in the class sighed. It was as if everyone looked down on Yi Sitian's actions at this moment. Hey Yi Sitian, how did you change so quickly? That's not what you said just now. Exactly. Have you forgotten what you were talking about with that He Qingqing just now? Qingchen, you actually… Mu Nanshi's voice, which was directed at Yi Sitian, was rather clear. Her smile was faintly discernible, and she looked very excited. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know where to start. Nanshi, I'm sorry. I didn't tell you my identity before because of some family reasons. Luo Qinchen pursed her lips and smiled. I hope it's not too late to say it now. Besides friendship, she felt more gratitude towards Mu Nanshi. It was the kind of gratitude she felt towards her when she was under attack from all sides. No, Mu Nanshi put her hands on her hips and looked at her proudly. I don't know why, but I just feel really good. She felt that although she was a supporting character, she had also participated in this face-slapping process. Chapter 2249. This was an ordinary morning, but because Luo Qingchen appeared as Daisy, it became particularly lively. At least 10 people from the chemistry department were sent to the hospital, all of them suddenly fainted intermittently. Of course, some of them were real, and some of them were faking it. After Luo Qingchen's identity was made public, from time to time, there were piles of people who wanted to get close to her. She expressed that she was very good at confronting people. But as the saying goes, don't hit a smiling face. For this kind of flattering people, sometimes she really didn't know how to face them. However, her family's young master Yu quickly solved this problem. The solution was simple and crude. Those people who often give gifts and sell smiles no longer appeared in Alice Academy. Luo Qingchen also didn't know what Yu Qianjin did, but she knew it must be him. Suddenly, she changed from an ordinary person who was pushed aside to become Luo Qianjin, who was in the limelight. To be honest, she was really not used to it. For example, you don't know who treated you as a true friend. For example, the original true friend alienated you. For example, Lu Qiufan. From the time he changed classes, every time he saw her, he would walk in another direction, and then change the time he went to the cafeteria and the library. He was deliberately avoiding her. This kind of avoidance was very obvious, she could easily detect it. Until one day, on the tree-lined path in the campus, the breeze blew, the snow fell slightly. At this moment, when Lu Qiufan turned around again, Luo Qingchen called him. "Student Lu, please wait a moment." Lu Qiufan stopped, but he didn't turn back. Luo Qingchen didn't care whether he turned back or not, she just wanted to say what she wanted to say. "Although I can probably understand the reason why you are avoiding me, but there is no way to say your identity, it is indeed because." "Qingchen," he interrupted her, slowly turned around, slightly narrowed his eyes and said, "I just don't dare to be too close to you." He was a distance away from her. His tall and straight figure seemed a little lonely. Luo Qingchen had prepared a lot of things to say, such as Mu Nanshi's feelings for him and their friendship. But when Lu Qiufan said this sentence, she couldn't say a word. She roughly understood what Lu Qiufan was thinking. The person she liked didn't like her back, so staying away from her was the best way to escape. Time could heal all wounds, not to mention love that had never been in love before, so it couldn't be called emotional pain. "I understand." Luo Qingchen put her hands in her pockets and nodded lightly. "I'm about to transfer schools." "Yes. So, let's just treat this as our last meeting." "All right." "Qingchen, can I hug you?" The surrounding air seemed to freeze at this moment. Snowflakes gently floated in front of her eyes, making the scene somewhat unreal. In the next second, just as she was about to say something, a gloomy voice answered for her. "Of course not." Yu Qianjin appeared out of nowhere with his hands in his pockets, and looked at Lu Qiufan gloomily. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows trembled slightly. She felt that the atmosphere was a little awkward. Lu Qiufan looked at Yu Qianjin with a relaxed expression and said, "Thank you for giving me the opportunity to study abroad. Since you have the ability to get first place in the year, you deserve the opportunity." Chapter 2250. "Haha," Yu Qianjin sneered, but he said calmly, "I can't wait for you to leave. But since you're going out in front of Alice, you have to behave well. Don't embarrass us." Lu Qiufan chuckled and a faint light flashed through his eyes. "Of course." Suddenly, Luo Qingchen felt that the atmosphere around them was particularly good. Boys were different from girls. Even if they were love rivals, they would treat each other differently. In short, Luo Qingchen liked the current atmosphere between Lu Qiufan and Yu Qianjin very much. Lu Qiufan left city a month later. Luo Qingchen and Mu Nanshi went to see him off. Although Yu Qianjin sent her to the airport, he didn't go in to see her off. According to Yu Qianjin, out of sight, out of mind. For possessive people, he didn't want to see his wife laughing with others. He would be anxious. Mu Nanshi burst into tears at the airport, which attracted the attention of the onlookers. Everyone seemed to think that Lu Qiufan, the scumbag, had abandoned the girl who had spent her youth with him. The two of them were entangled with each other at the airport. It was Luo Qingchen's first time seeing Lu Qiufan like this. He helplessly touched Mu Nanshi's head and murmured, "Don't cry. When I'm stable, I'll invite you to come over and play." Really? Her eyes were red from crying. She was no longer as calm as usual and asked with an aggrieved expression. "Really?" Lu Qiufan responded seriously. Finally, his eyes fell on Luo Qingchen and he said softly, "I'm leaving. Bye-bye." The scene of a farewell was always a little sad. Luo Qingchen watched Lu Qiufan pass through the checkpoint and sighed softly. Then she turned around and looked at Mu Nanshi. "Don't cry. I'll treat you to a big meal." Although it was a big meal, the person who treated them was not Luo Qingchen, but her fiancé, Yu Qianjin. Throughout the meal, Mu Nanshi kept talking about the story between her and Lu Qiufan. Once a person left, they would miss it even more. Those words that had been hidden in the depths of his heart. He couldn't wait to speak them all out in an instant. She had always known that Mu Nanshi liked Lu Qiufan. At that time, she wanted to let her younger brother walk on the right path, but she did not know that she was sinking deeper and deeper into it. "Look at you. If you like her, then go all out." Yu Qianjin raised his eyebrows and said, "In case someone covets someone else's wife. What do you mean by other people's daughter-in-law?" Mu Nanshi was stunned for a moment, looking confused. Luo Qingchen hurriedly stepped on Yu Qianjin's foot, then smiled and said, "Ignore him, ignore him." Yu Qianjin groaned in pain and said, "If you like her so much, I can send you abroad." For Yu Qianjin, this was a small matter. As long as someone found true love and stopped coveting his wife, he could send 10,000 people abroad. "No. I want to take the exam myself," Mu Nanshi said with a serious face. "I want to get first place and get the chance to go abroad." Yu Qianjin said with a cold face, "As long as you're happy." He had a feeling that his excited thoughts had been shattered in an instant. When could Lu Qiufan have a girlfriend? When could he stop stealing his wife? Chapter 2251. Time passed quickly. In the blink of an eye, winter passed and spring came. Mu Nanshi seemed to spend all her time in the library except for eating and sleeping. In her eyes, that level of effort was like a wild horse galloping on the vast prairie. No one could make her turn back. In the same year, it was the 30th anniversary of the establishment of Alice Academy. Many people who had returned from overseas also came to the school. The Alice Academy was originally an aristocratic academy, and this 30th anniversary celebration could be considered spectacular. However, what surprised Luo Qingchen the most was the arrival of a couple. The woman was not very beautiful, but she looked gentle and dignified under her dress. The man was really handsome. Even middle-aged people could not resist his handsomeness and chic. What surprised her was not that their looks did not match, but what the woman said at the speech ceremony. "I'm very happy to return here with my husband after 30 years. In fact, the new name of Alice Academy has a lot to do with us." She smiled gently and her eyes fell on the man beside her. The man gently took her hand and looked at her affectionately. "At that time, they always said that you gave me a magic potion to drink." Wow! When the handsome man said this, the whole audience sighed. Everyone seemed to realize that the man and woman standing on the stage were the mysterious couple from back then. "After graduation, we went abroad together. This matter has become another mystery." The woman smiled and continued, "I heard that someone was really researching magic potions, so I wanted to come back to explain it to everyone. By the way, let's share our love." The man interrupted her and said with a doting expression. For the next half an hour, the middle-aged man and woman on the stage began to tell their story. Why would the school hunk, who had countless halos, fall in love with an ordinary Cinderella? In fact, it was just a momentary feeling. It was said that it was because at the sports meeting that day, many people handed him water and drinks, but only Cinderella gave him rib soup. The hot rib soup had a few green onions floating on it. The story was long, but the ending was beautiful. After listening to it, the last 0.1% of doubts in her heart disappeared. Turned out that there was no magic potion in the world. It turned out that everything was fabricated and exaggerated by the later generations. During this time, Luo Qingchen also heard a scream from He Qingqing, who was standing at the back. She held the blue bottle in her left hand and the bottle filled with powder in her right hand. She kept shaking her head and muttering, "Impossible, impossible." Yu Qianjin frowned and instantly shielded Luo Qingchen behind him. He was afraid that this crazy person would do something terrible. "If this student has any questions, you can come and ask me." You're lying." He Qingqing threw the blue bottle on the ground and roared, "You're not a couple from back then. You're definitely actors she hired." The man frowned and looked at He Qingqing with slight displeasure. 102471005420 is my student number. If you don't believe me, you can check it on the school's website. You can also compare it with my graduation photo. Why are you so fierce?" The woman beside him glanced at him and reminded him softly. Chapter 2252. Yu Qianjin, who was standing in front of Luo Qingchen, didn't forget to turn his head and look at her as he repeated the man's words. "I like you because I like you, not because of anything else. Do you understand? Silly girl." She looked into his deep eyes and gently nodded. The corners of her mouth lifted into a faint smile. Actually, he knew the doubts in his heart not long ago. He wanted to tell her his thoughts and express his love. He didn't want to be full of love, but in the end it was just an understatement from someone else. Oh, young Master Jean. He only fell in love with Luo Qingchen because he took a magic potion. He truly liked her, not some magic potion, okay? Ever since that day, He Qingqing never appeared in school again. The He family, which was originally one of the 4 major families in a city, seemed to be gradually declining. Some people said that He Qingqing's parents took her abroad to see a psychiatrist. Others said that He Qingqing was addicted to studying magic and couldn't extricate herself. In short, everything about He Qingqing was just hearsay. There wasn't any concrete information. Time passed very quickly. A month after the school's anniversary celebration, Alice ushered in a big exam. The first place of this exam would receive Alice's recommendation and the opportunity to study abroad. Although the story seemed very dramatic, the first place was indeed Mu Nanxi. But thinking about it carefully, it wasn't a drama. She had put in so much effort, so she should receive the same amount in return. Before leaving, she generously invited Luo Qingchen and Yu Qianjin to eat at a food stall. She also told them that Lu Qiufan had already congratulated her in advance and said that she was waiting for her. But after drinking 2 mouthfuls of wine, she looked at Luo Qingchen with a dejected expression and said, "Don't tell me he has a girlfriend. It doesn't matter. If you have a girlfriend, you can choose, little fatty. I think that's pretty good too." Yu Qianjin didn't forget to respond while eating meat skewers. Luo Qingchen stepped on his foot again and said, don't worry. It's not that bad. If Lu Qiufan was so easy to pick up, she wouldn't have been single for so many years. My Qing is still the best. Whoa. 3 months later, Mu Nanxi successfully traveled thousands of miles to a foreign country to find the love that she had once been so close to her but had never spoken of. Luo Qingchen expressed that she was waiting for her good news. It was just that the news had arrived, but it was plain. The two of them didn't seem to be in a hurry to break through. In December of the same year, Luo Qingchen and Yu Qianjin held their grand wedding. As the 2 most famous families in a city, those who attended their wedding were naturally rich and respectable. The invitations were sent to Lu Qiufan and Mu Nanxi, and they arrived on time. Mu Nanxi was wearing a long pink dress and Lu Qiufan was wearing a black suit. They looked very compatible. When she threw the bouquet, she didn't forget to give Mu Nanxi a look. Before she could react, the bouquet was already in her hand. It seems that the next person to enter the palace will be you. Luo Qingchen's eyebrows moved slightly as a faint smile appeared on her lip. When Lu Qiufan heard this, she walked straight to Mu Nanxi and took her bouquet. She raised her eyebrows slightly and looked at her. It's pretty. It suits you very well. All this time, he hadn't accepted Mu Nanxi not because he was waiting for someone better to appear. It was because he wanted to get rid of the person in his heart. This time, when he came back to attend her wedding and saw how happy she was, he actually felt happy for her. She felt that she had done it. Then, she could start a new relationship. As for Luo Qingchen and Yu Qianjin, their relatives and friends played with them in all sorts of ways at the wedding. They kissed and carried each other dozens of times. After the wedding, there was only one thing left for them. Chapter 2253. I don't want to say goodnight to you. I want you to miss me so much that you can't sleep at night. But wife, can you stop taking all the blankets? Yu Qianjin. For a person who can have anything he wants, I was used to getting everything since I was young. I was even proud and arrogant, and no one caught my eye. What is love? Hee. If someone asked me, I would definitely sneer and tell them that there is no such thing as love in this world. Because most girls only look at money and looks. Of course, there might be a small portion that isn't like that, but I haven't met anyone. When I first saw her, I didn't even see her clearly. The classmates in the class were all praising her for a long time. But when the teacher said she was just a normal student, everyone seemed to stop talking. What followed was the sighs and mockery of the girls. I couldn't help but sneer. If she was a rich girl with power in a city, how could she receive this kind of treatment? He originally thought that she would choose to silently endure the ridicule like everyone else and quietly hide in a corner to live her life. I didn't expect her to choose Lu Qiufan as her desk mate. Actually, my first reaction was, since she's so bold, why didn't she choose me as her desk mate? When she walked to the empty seat next to Lu Qiufan, I glanced at her from the corner of my eyes. She was indeed very beautiful, especially her eyes. They were like dust without any ripples. At first, I thought she was pretending to be calm, but I didn't know she was just that calm. Also, she never wanted to talk to me, which made me feel very strange. There were countless people in this school who wanted to get close to me, no matter if they were normal or noble, but this was the first girl who didn't even look at me. Although she told me she looked at me a lot after she became my wife, I was looking at the scenery outside the window. Was she not looking at Lu Qiufan? Ever since she sat in front of me, I felt that she was a bit familiar, as if I had seen her somewhere before. Yes. I asked her out of great curiosity. I probably wanted to see if the girl who never talked to me was pretending to be reserved, or if she didn't like me. Later, after we got married, I brought this up many times, and she would always give me an infuriating answer, because at first sight I thought Lu Qiufan was more handsome. I threw myself on the bed without a word until she murmured that I was more handsome. Of course, this was all in the future. At that moment, she was saying that my way of flirting was old-fashioned and that there was nothing new about it. This was the first time in my life that I felt defeated. I actually fell into the hands of a little girl. He didn't know why his heart was filled with panic, but he also paid more attention to her. However, paying attention to her was just paying attention to her, and that didn't mean anything. What I wanted more was to watch others ostracize her, or even make a move on her. Perhaps I didn't see my own heart clearly at that time. That was the thing I regretted the most in my life. On that rainy night, those people surrounded her in the alley. I watched as she held a black umbrella. She didn't want Mu Nanxi and Lu Qiufan to accompany her. She wanted to face a group of people alone. At that moment I felt my heart skip a beat. Somehow I felt that she was very brave. Perhaps this was the stubbornness of Cinderella in fairy tales. Chapter 2254. I was actually nearby the day she was beaten up by a group of big sisters. I was like her, holding a black umbrella and watching them force her into a corner. I knew I was waiting for a chance to be a hero and save the beauty. I think she will be very grateful to me and like me very much. At that time, I would have the right to choose and see if she was really special to me. But I never thought that my future wife didn't need me at all. On that rainy night, in that dark and damp corner, she was wearing a clean school uniform and holding a black umbrella. His eyes were cold, without a trace of warmth. She didn't panic and stood there calmly. When her eyes swept over, there was an indescribable, killing intent. That night, when I saw her like this from above, I couldn't help but hold my breath. But before I could react, she had already killed her way into the crowd. Sharp screams came from the alley, and there seemed to be the sound of weapons falling. 3 minutes later, the alley gradually quieted down. There was a slight moan in the sound of the heavy rain. She was still wearing a clean school uniform and holding the umbrella in her hand. Her clothes weren't even wet. I saw her coldly look up and walk out of the alley step by step. At that moment, countless feelings mixed together in my heart. Indescribable emotions. Maybe even I didn't know why it was like this. Why did I have a feeling of heartache and wanting to protect her? That night, I didn't sleep at all and suppressed the indescribable emotions in my heart. I wanted to use all my strength to get her gaze and attention, to put myself in a superior position and have the right to choose. Unfortunately, I didn't succeed and instead fell deeper and deeper. I kept these thoughts at the bottom of my heart and resisted with all my might. But in the end, I failed. I was sure I couldn't hide the love in my heart. It was on that sunny morning. The girl who always liked to cause trouble in the class declared war on them again. In a moment of desperation, she actually took out a knife. I watched as she gripped the dagger in a split second. Her expression didn't change at all. She didn't even blink her eyebrows. However, I felt my heart skip a beat. The feeling of not being able to breathe was really uncomfortable. I looked at her desperately trying to save people. Her face was pale from the loss of blood, but she didn't stop what she was doing. Her bright eyes were so clear that one could see the bottom, and there was only indifference in them. Lu Qiufan stepped forward and handed her a handkerchief. Like a knight in a fairy tale, she silently protected her regardless of the eyes of others. I knew that if I didn't do anything, I might lose it soon. Ever since I was young, I've been a very stubborn person. If I like something, I'll always like it. I like it 100% and won't change. At that moment, I knew that I could no longer ignore the feelings that filled my heart and the image of her that I couldn't get rid of in my mind. I found out I like her, but I didn't know her feelings for me. Just like how I desperately wanted to catch her gaze, but no matter what, I couldn't get it. But it was precisely because of this that I couldn't allow that person called Lu Qiufan to take advantage of the situation. What I want, the person I like, I will never give to others. Chapter 2255. Reality proved that my interference that day was correct. At least I forcefully kept her by my side to prevent her from being taken away by criminals. I gave her my phone number, and before I left, I provoked her and asked, "Do you dare to call?" Actually, I was even more nervous than her at that time. I checked my phone every 10 seconds after returning home. It was clearly fully charged, but I was worried that I would run out of battery. I even asked the housekeeper many times if the villa's Wi-Fi would suddenly be cut off. The housekeeper replied, "Young master, Wi-Fi is not needed to make a call." The corner of my mouth twitched, and I powerlessly lay down on the sofa. So this was the feeling of being infected by the poison of love, nervousness, uneasiness, powerlessness, anxiety, but still holding a heart full of joy and expectation, waiting for her response. Although she didn't call in the end. The next day, the school began to spread the news about the magic potion. He Ching even boldly blocked my path. She kept telling me that there was a problem with the water she gave me that day. It was the magic potion she made. As long as you drink the potion with blood, you will madly fall in love with the owner of the blood. And that day, the water I drank just happened to have a drop of my wife's blood in it. Actually, when I heard He Ching talk to me about this, I felt inexplicably excited. There was always a feeling that he had unwittingly drunk her blood, and he was excited. But I was very clear in my heart, the so-called magic potion didn't exist. Because when I started to think about her, I knew better than anyone. Perhaps it was the first time we spoke, or perhaps it was that night in the heavy rain, but I was very clear that it definitely wasn't that day. He Ching was very stubborn. She only closed her mouth when I put down my face. I wasn't a so-called gentleman, although I never hit women. That didn't mean I would give them a good face. Of course, my wife was an exception. Although she didn't call me afterwards, she invited me to Moon Laurel Lane. I seriously booked the entire Star Moon Street, waiting for her arrival. I knew she wanted to treat me to a drink, but I didn't want her to drink. Why would a little girl drink, not to mention she was injured? Although I said that, I still felt that the ambiguous atmosphere was raised to the extreme. In the quiet bar, under the warm light, I received her gaze. Those beautiful eyes looked at me attentively. But to me, her injuries were more important than anything, including the big matter of pouncing on her. I always felt that her first impression of me wasn't good, so I had to work hard to leave a better impression. The facts proved that my efforts weren't in vain. I could feel that she liked me, at least she was liking me slowly. Ever since she became my girlfriend, other than a few girls, no one dared to cause trouble for her. Although I knew that she could handle it, it was better to leave this kind of trivial matter to me. But I didn't think that the girl called He Ching would want to test her so-called magic potion in front of so many people. What a joke, if it was in the past, no matter who the 4 great clans were, I wouldn't have shown any mercy, let alone accept the so-called ridiculous verification. Because I didn't want her reputation. Because I don't want other people's rumors to affect her. She is my princess, a princess who shines brilliantly. Chapter 2256. I drank the so-called magic potion in front of everyone and kissed her in the middle. Not for anything else, but to tell Alice and all the people. There was no such thing as a magic potion in this world. I liked her, no matter how long it took. It was like a gust of wind, blowing for 90,000 miles without asking when it would return. Since that time, almost no one in the school talked about the magic potion. After all, I used myself to break this rumor. Just when I thought everything was going well, I received a notice that the daughter of my father's good friend, Daisy, had returned to the country. I seemed to have seen her a few times when I was young, but it was more than 10 years ago, so I didn't remember clearly. Moreover, most of them were noble daughters, so it was inevitable that they were a bit cold. If she didn't have the intention to get close to me, I wouldn't have any impression of her. Originally, this daughter returning to the country naturally had nothing to do with me. But my mother told me that she would be my fiancée. This news shocked me instantly, and I was at a loss. I had never disobeyed my father since I was young. Because he was the same, he had never interfered with my decision. But this time, I vaguely felt that I didn't have the right to choose. Because the love and hatred of the older generation was also very tangled. I heard that my father and Uncle Luolong's wife, Daisy, had a young love, but because of various family interests, they didn't get together in the end. As for the Luo family, he more or less felt guilty. But guilt was guilt, and it couldn't be made up for with my future happiness. I didn't agree, okay? Because the noble circle was so small, it didn't take long for the news of my and Daisy's engagement to spread. At that time I was afraid that she would misunderstand later. I hoped that she wouldn't know the process, but I knew that there would always be people who would gossip. Of course, those people all disappeared in Alice's eyes. After all, I couldn't tolerate sand in my eyes. I kept reassuring her, telling her not to worry. But she didn't seem to be worried at all, and didn't look nervous at all. This made me feel a bit frustrated. After all, only when you like, you will be jealous, only when you like, you will care. Later, I thought that she probably believed me. Then, I couldn't do anything to let her down. So when the two families met that night at the Imperial Royal Hotel, I laid my cards on the table with my father. I knew he would be angry and would object. But I said what I had to say, and at the last moment I knew he was wavering. After all, he knew what kind of person I was. Originally, it was just two families canceling the marriage alliance, but we were still family friends. But if I were to go all out, then we wouldn't even be family friends anymore. However, the heavens always like to joke around. I was like a frog at the bottom of a well, watching my fiancée switch between the roles of Cinderella and princess. Never in my wildest dreams would I have thought that she was Daisy, the only daughter of the Luo family. Surprise, joy, excitement, countless emotions mixed together, causing me to almost lose my senses. It turned out that our script had already been written the day before. It turned out that we were not a prince and Cinderella at all, but a prince and a princess. It turned out that fairy tales were so wonderful. If there is still a chance, I have one more thing to say to her. I've missed my childhood sweetheart and avoided my first awakening of love. Now I only want to be with you. Chapter 2257. Welcome back, host. The following is a summary of this mission. Host, please read it carefully. Name: Luo Qingchen Plane Space. Magic Potion. You will madly love me. Mission completion. 100%. Experience points. Due to returning to this plane, the original 500 experience points gained from this plane are no longer effective. The portable space currently stores 5 items: 4/5 exquisite ring, 9-section moon whip, phoenix dance sword, universal medicine box. Permanent ability: space and time freeze LV4. Permanent ability: instant movement LV2. Exchange points: 8,000 base points. 40 hosts. 37th mission panel is below. Appearance: physical strength, intelligence, stature. In the next second, the bronze mirror changed pages. Mission grade: A. Experience gained: 500. Female lead: Luo Qingchen. Male lead: Mo Yi. Supporting female lead: Feng Ling. Air supporting male lead: Murong Nan. Mission content: return to 3 days before the death of the female lead and obtain the love of the male lead. Mission change: 2 spacetimes. What do you mean by 2 spacetimes? Host will know after receiving the memories. Memories are being released. Host, please check carefully. After receiving all the memories, Luo Qingchen suddenly felt a little scared. Because she returned to 3 days ago and not 3 years ago. It wasn't because 3 days and 3 years was a big difference, but because 3 days, she couldn't change the ending. She couldn't do anything. The story was very long. When receiving it, even as the host, she felt a sense of suffocation. She didn't know how to describe this kind of original host and male lead. She could only say that fate made fools of people. The time had to start from when they were young. The male lead was the son of Consort Wan of the Mo dynasty. Consort Wan was originally a princess of the previous dynasty. The father of the male lead, Mo Yi, pitied her and brought her into the harem. But as an emperor, his natural disposition was romantic. In addition, Mo Ye's father, Mo Gongyi, wasn't an infatuated emperor. In addition, Consort Wan herself didn't have a devastatingly beautiful appearance. Once the novelty passed, she lost her position in Mo Gongyi's heart. After all, every year, there would be a beautiful young mistress entering the palace. There were many girls to replace her. Fortunately, Consort Wan was pregnant before she was left out in the cold. That child was the male lead, Mo Yi. However, he was born a tragedy. No one liked her, no one loved her. After Consort Wan's death, he was raised by a nanny in the palace. Because of his low status in the palace, not only did he not enjoy the favor of the princes, His life was even worse than that of the common people. Fortunately, Mo Yi had been patient since he was young, and was indifferent to matters of power. Seeing that he had no future, everyone stopped harming him. Mo Gongyi's natural disposition was romantic. He had more than 20 princes and more than 40 princesses. He didn't even know the names of some of his children. Naturally, Mo Yi was one of them. The original owner and Mo Yi first met when she was 7 years old. She was the daughter of the 7th madam of the imperial censor's family, so she could be considered a concubine. There was one thing that the original owner had encountered that was very similar to Mo Yi. That was, their fathers were romantic by nature. They liked one woman after another, and their hearts changed faster than the change of seasons. Spring passed and autumn came, and the women standing by their side were always different. In Mo Gongyi's 20 years, the Mo dynasty was prosperous and the people were at peace. At that time, Mo Yi was 14 years old, and the original owner was only 7 years old. Chapter 2258. After all, in such a lively ceremony, as long as they put in a few good words in front of the emperor, not only could they get gold, silver, and treasures, but they also had the opportunity to gain fame and status. Even if they did not have any of these, playing a song or singing a song could also be rewarded. At the very least, brushing their faces in front of the emperor was also good. But they didn't go. It was probably because their backgrounds were similar, which made them feel a sense of mutual appreciation. In the loneliest time, they met their childhood sweetheart. For Mo Yi, the original owner had always been a child who needed to be protected. He said, "I am just a prince without power, a fish on the chopping block. Are you still willing to be friends with me?" She replied, "I have seen Big Brother Prince, then are you willing to be friends with me, a concubine's child?" This rhetorical question made Mo Yi speechless. "Well, from now on I am your friend. And my only friend." From that day on, the original owner would go to the palace from time to find Mo Yi. The palace was strictly guarded, and most of them sneaked in behind their father. Although there was a gap of a whole generation between them, it did not prevent them from communicating. On the contrary, they both felt that only they could understand each other's word. In the 25th year of Mo Gongyi's reign, the Princess Royal held a 100-flower banquet. The whole banquet was full of flattering people. Because this banquet was quite special, they did not have time to sneak away after they took their seat. What was a 100-flower banquet? The ancients had a saying, "100 flowers compete in splendor." This was the meaning. Some of the men and women at the banquet wanted to climb the social ladder, and some wanted to find true love. For the original owner and Mo Yi, this was a world that was incompatible with them. But they did not think that just because they did not offend others, it did not mean that others would not offend them. Mo City, also known as Moonshine City, was the main city of the Mo dynasty. There were rumors in the marketplace that the 4th Prince Mo Yi was the most handsome man in the entire Moonshine City and was the object of many women's admiration. But because of his humble status, even if he had a bewitching appearance, the daughters of ministers could only look at him twice and did not dare to come forward to strike up a conversation. And at this time, His Royal Highness the Crown Prince came over. He seemed to be drunk. With a beaming smile on his face, he said, "I heard that 4th brother is the most handsome man in Moonshine City. How come you don't have a beautiful woman by your side?" The Crown Prince's name was Mo Quan. Like his name, he was big-hearted and fat. Mo Gongyi gave him this name because he wanted her to treat him leniently. Little did he know that his body shape was also developing horizontally. He wasn't tall, but he was as fat as a ball. But even with such an appearance, he was still surrounded by several women supporting him. The original owner was only 12 years old at that time, but she had grown into a slender and elegant girl. Naturally, she was furious that Mo Yi was being bullied. Without another word, she stood up and walked towards Mo Yi. Then, she stood firmly beside him. A few seconds later, he said, "Who said there isn't?" The original owner would never forget that gaze. She wasn't afraid of power, she wasn't afraid of getting hurt, and she didn't care about karma. Liking someone meant standing firmly by his side at all times. Even if the person he was facing was the crown prince, who was second only to the most powerful person in the world. Of course, bravery came with a price. For example, she was beaten by her father, who she had never loved. For example, she was not given food for 3 days and 3 nights. The reason was very simple. The Luo family wanted to support the crown prince, not some prince of the cold palace. Chapter 2259. Moreover, it was the 100-flower banquet set up by the eldest princess, so some things were already unavoidable. Moreover, the eldest princess was still enthusiastically talking in front of the emperor about how she felt they were a particularly compatible pair. In the end, the emperor decreed the marriage. Even if the original owner's father was unwilling, he couldn't defy the emperor's order. Henceforth, the matter between the original owner and Mo Yi was settled like this. When the original owner reached the age of 18, she would marry the fourth prince. He earnestly said, "You treat me like this, I have no way to repay you. From now on, my life is yours." She only smiled and shook her head. "I don't want your life, as long as you treat me well, it's fine. I don't want extravagant clothing and jade food, glory and wealth, as long as we can be together, it's fine. I will always be by your side, I absolutely won't leave you behind." The words Mo Yi said to her constantly reverberated in her mind in the following days. It was like a hot needle, little by little, piercing her heart. It was very painful, but it was somewhat warm. In the 28th year of Mo Gongyi's reign, the eldest princess died of illness. The Feng dynasty was eyeing the Mo dynasty covetously, ready to dispatch troops at any time for a groundless crime. After Mo Gongyi learned of this matter, he decided to send a hostage to the Feng dynasty. On one hand, he expressed his friendliness, and on the other hand, he could monitor the enemy. In the imperial court and the harem, only those with power could survive. After so many years, only a few of Mo Gongyi's 20-something princes remained. Now there were only 3 left. One was the crown prince, one was the 4th prince, and one was the 8th prince. The power in the imperial court was divided into the crown prince and the 8th prince. Because the 8th prince was the son of his most beloved imperial concubine Li, he naturally wouldn't let him go to the Feng dynasty. The crown prince was the future heir of the Mo dynasty, so it was even more impossible. Thus, using the process of elimination, the only one who could go to the Feng dynasty was Mo Yi. But Zhen once decreed that the 4th prince had an engagement. Mo Gongyi hesitated. Li Shi shook her head and said, "Now that the eldest princess has passed away, that engagement doesn't count." In the end, the emperor overturned the previous imperial edict and ordered Mo Yi to go to the Feng dynasty to become a hostage. That night, the original owner cried under the peach tree where they often drank. Mo Yi walked towards her step by step. Under the bright moonlight, he touched her head and said, "Don't cry. Wait for me to come back." "I'll wait for you, I'll definitely wait for you." At that time, Mo Yi had told himself that he had to achieve something during this trip to the Phoenix dynasty. He no longer wanted to be a useless person who was at the mercy of others. He couldn't even protect the people who were most important to him. Clearly, in another year, it would be her birthday. Clearly, she was so close to becoming his bride. Whether they were rich or poor, as long as they were together, there was nothing to fear. Unfortunately, the heavens didn't give them such a chance. 3 days later, he had no choice but to go to the Phoenix dynasty to become a hostage. Perhaps he never came back. Perhaps she had waited for a lifetime. Perhaps this was the happy ending of the story. But he just had to come back. He used 3 years to accumulate his own power in the Feng dynasty. Once again, he accidentally saved the Feng king's daughter while killing enemies, making Princess Feng Ling Er fall in love with him. The Feng king had always doted on his daughter. In addition, the Feng king appreciated capable people. Mo Yi had won every battle. He had already shed his identity as a hostage and became a general. Chapter 2260. Because without Feng Ling heir, there would be no troops from the Feng dynasty. In that case, he couldn't force the abdication. In fact, even if he didn't force the abdication, the Mo dynasty was already rotten on the inside. The two powers contended against each other, and in the end, both sides suffered. Mo Gongyi was seriously ill and on the verge of death. This was his chance, his only chance. As long as he stood at the highest point, he could let the original host stand by his side without any worries. In the end, he succeeded. Regardless of the many years of hardship, he became the king of the Mo dynasty. When he saw the original host again, she was still standing alone under the peach blossom tree. She was already a big girl. The wind gently blew at the corner of her clothes, making her appear very beautiful. Mo Yi stepped forward and gently hugged her. "I've returned. But you already have a wife, right?" It was naturally impossible for the original host to not know that he brought the Feng dynasty's princess back, but she still wanted to come to him without hesitation. Because she waited for too long, every time she got drunk under the peach blossom tree, she would always feel someone gently patting her head in a daze. To her, it was a beautiful dream, a very, very beautiful dream. "That's not important. From now on, I can protect you. I won't let anyone bully you." "Thank you, Big Brother Yi." But they didn't know that women in the world were easily jealous, let alone Feng Ling heir, who had been spoiled since childhood. At first, she felt that Mo Yi was aloof, but she admired this kind of man even more. On the battlefield, he had the grace of 1 against 100. That face seemed to be carved by the heavens. Everything about Mo Yi made her deeply infatuated, so she wanted to marry him regardless of everything. She wanted her father to prepare an army for her to go to the Mo dynasty. But everything she did wasn't to make a wedding dress for someone else. Then, the person who occupied Mo Yi's heart, the person at the tip of her heart, must die. When Mo Yi told her about the original host's life, she always smiled and said, "It's good as long as you like it." In truth, she had already secretly altered Mo Yi's diet. The Phoenix dynasty had a type of chronic medicine that would cause a person to suddenly fall into a coma after consuming it for more than a month. They would only wake up after half a month. Feng Ling heir prepared everything and planned to use this half a month to get rid of the original owner. She already had a method in mind. A month later, the emperor suddenly fell into a coma. The Secretariat found a letter of collaboration with the enemy as well as a voodoo villain. The imperial censor's elder brother, the original owner's uncle, was an official. Rebellion, witchcraft, what terrifying words! Once one was tainted by them, one's entire family would be executed. That night, the original owner was locked up in the Supreme Court, waiting for the punishment from above. She thought that Mo Yi was now the most powerful person in the world. He said that he would protect her, and he would definitely do it. Last night they had been drinking wine, composing poems, and dancing to the moon. She firmly believed that he would come to save her. Waiting was a long process. However, what was frightening was not waiting, but the result of waiting for so long. By the will of heaven, the emperor decrees. The Luo clan is suspected of conspiring against witchcraft. The evidence is conclusive. From now on, the men will be beheaded, and the women will be exiled to the river. The original owner did not see Mo Yi. Even when she finally put on a dirty prison uniform, handcuffed, and sent away from Moonshine City, she did not see Mo Yi. That time was probably the most painful time in the life of the original owner. In the end, he violated his oath and left her. Because of Feng Ling heir? She did not know. Chapter 2261. Feng Ling heir was very fast. In less than 3 days, the Luo palace was empty. The men were all beheaded, and the women were exiled to the border. You might ask why she could do this. Of course she could, because more than half of the Mo dynasty's troops were from the Feng dynasty. After Mo Yi fell into a coma, she naturally had the right to make all the decisions. Not to mention that rebellion and witchcraft deserved to die. On the way to the border, they had to sleep in the open. They barely had a bite to eat. Halfway through the journey, more than half of them had died. The soldiers didn't stop because of the dead. They weren't even willing to bury the dead with a single strand of sand. The corpses were casually thrown to the side of the road. Whether it was her older sister who bullied her when she was young, or her younger sister who mocked her for being a concubine's child, they all became family at this moment. When they fell one by one, she felt an inexplicable pain in her heart. The only belief she held on to came from her mother, but that night, it rained heavily. Lightning flashed and thunder roared. She hugged her mother and curled up under a tree, shivering. Her mother asked her, "If you knew Mo Yi was this kind of person, would you still love him?" After a long time, she bit her lip and said, "Mother, I can't stop myself from loving him, but I can hate him. I hate him with all my might. It's more than love." Her mother rubbed her head and slowly closed her eyes. "If you can go back, you must remember to endure. Only when the power is in your own hands can you have the chance to choose between love and hate." On that stormy night with lightning and thunder, the original owner's mother passed away. When she died, she was still worried about the original owner. She took advantage of the rainy night to bury her, then knelt in the rain for a long time without getting up. There were fewer and fewer people heading to the border. When they reached Yang City, there were less than 10 women left. At least 5 of them were about to die. The soldiers were afraid that the queen would blame them for not doing well, so they bought a few girls in Yang City and mixed in with them to head to the border. Because the original owner had a high fever for several days, she was thought to be a dying person and stayed in Yang City. Unfortunately, she wasn't fated to die. Yang City was like a city. Large amounts of business were done here every day. You can sell things and also sell people. After the original owner of the body stayed in the Ichuan brothel, she sold herself and became a singer. Because of her good looks, coupled with her charming voice, many officials and nobles from prestigious families stopped in succession and did not hesitate to spend a large amount of money to buy one of her songs. Half a year later, the host had become a popular singer in Yang City and the surrounding towns. She redeemed herself and left Yang City. Eventually, she joined a singing and dancing class heading to Moonshine City and changed her name to Penitence. No one knew her real name, but anyone who had heard her sing could feel the sadness in her voice. It was precisely because of this sadness that more people wanted to get close to her, wanted to have her. But no one succeeded. Along the way, she took 3 years to follow the singing and dancing class back to the Moonshine City. Along the way, she was not in a hurry. Sometimes, when there were many people in the town, the troop leader suggested that she perform a few more times, and she was willing to do so. At that time, she thought that her heart had already given up. For a few moments, she even wanted to escape. But every night in the nightmares, the 118 lives of the Luo clan were lost. He had no choice but to avenge the extermination of his sect. Chapter 2262. When the people of Moonshine City heard that the Chasing Dream Song and Dance Troupe was coming, they went to the streets to watch. Of course, what they wanted to see the most was Huin Yang, the famous singer of this world. At that time, it happened to be the 3rd year of the new emperor's ascension, and a big banquet was held in the palace. There was a special invitation to go to the palace. The performance was to liven things up. The salary was 3 times the usual performance, and Huin Yang was even better. The troop leader naturally knew that the original owner was not short of money, so when he received the invitation to enter the palace, he asked for her opinion. After all, when she went to the official residence to perform in the past, the original owner never went. But this time was different. The original owner almost immediately agreed to the troop leader and expressed her willingness to go. The troop leader was naturally very happy. He went to the inviter and asked for a deposit. 3 years, a whole 3 years. Back then, when everyone had died, she had kept finding excuses for him. Maybe he just didn't have enough time to save her, maybe he had something that was hard to say, maybe, but the carefree throne always reminded her that there was no maybe. She did not want to find excuses for him. The fact was that he could not resist the power of the Feng dynasty's princess. She, on the other hand, was nothing more than a victim of this power. Just because they had a childhood promise, just because she was the person he loved the most. Love? Ridiculous love. In November of the same year, the 3rd year of the new emperor's ascension, a luxurious banquet. She stood in the middle of the dance floor and sang a beautiful song. Unexpectedly, everyone was amazed. Such a scene was so familiar. She used to stand bravely by his side, regardless of the eyes of everyone, and betrayed the whole world for him. But what did she get in return? Her whole family was beheaded. Except for her, no one survived. Mo Yi recognized the original owner almost at a glance and rushed forward to hug her without saying a word. His embrace was very hot, but this kind of heat made her feel cold. Hatred had long blinded her eyes. Her mother's words to her kept ringing in her ears. Only by holding power in your hands can you get what you want and never be bullied. If she was young, she would not understand the meaning of this sentence, but now it involved the lives of more than 100 people in the Luo family. She should understand. Qing is that you? Is that you? She slowly took off the veil covering her face. Her clear eyes carried a dark light as she looked at him and said, "Yes, I'm back." That very day, she was brought back to the palace by Mo Yi and conferred the title of noble consort. She hadn't seen Feng Ling heir and didn't know where she was. There was no empress in the Mo dynasty now. After she left, he kept looking for her like a madman. He didn't let go of anyone who had hurt her. As for the culprit, Feng Ling heir, he did not kill her. Death was too easy. In a person's life, the lightest thing was the life, and the most important thing was the soul. The cold palace, where she waited for a long time, was where Feng Ling heir would return to for the rest of her life. After the previous host became an imperial concubine, Mo Yi doted on her a lot, spending almost every night in Dim Light Palace. Glimmer Palace was a palace he had built for her. She was like the only light in his life, shining into his dark and damp heart. He said, "Qing the guilt I have towards you, I will definitely make it up to you in this life. I will never let anyone hurt you again, absolutely," she replied. I believe you. As long as I believe everything you say, it's fine as long as I can be by your side. Believe? Chapter 2263. She personally gave him a light pink sachet with her favorite peach blossoms, but she put a slow poison in it. That road to the Yellow Springs, from the day she entered the palace, she personally paved it for him. The front court and the back court involved a lot of people. With her identity, if she wanted to win power and sit in the court, she must learn to endure. Endure what ordinary people can't endure, only then can she achieve great things. She never let herself be spoiled. Once Mo Yi came to Glimmer Hall too many times, she would pretend to be sick. Whenever there was a vacancy in the imperial court, Mo Yi would always ask her indirectly about who to choose. She always smiled and refused, saying that the harem couldn't interfere in politics. But in the end, she would still choose a few under Mo Yi's enthusiasm. She actually knew that Mo Yi allowed her to expand her power in the court. Mo Yi also knew that she had no sincerity and was always on guard. After 3 years of separation, she didn't complain at all when she came back. The Luo family's 118 people died, but she always lowered her head and smiled. It's all in the past. What kind of hatred? How could it be in the past? Even he couldn't forgive himself, let alone her. He understood her so well. Her eyes were tender like water, but in her heart, she had already built layers of stone walls to prevent outsiders from entering. So even if he knew that she was constantly accumulating power in the palace, He always listened to her. He even used his own power to help her expand her power. The front court and the back court all praised her for seeing the big picture, except for the Nalan family, who had 300,000 soldiers. They had a daughter called Nalan Ing, who was Mo Ye's imperial concubine. Then, she couldn't stay. Mo Ye's 7th year, she was pregnant. Now, only the Nalan family's power was left in the harem, and the only imperial concubine. She smiled coldly, almost without any hesitation. She asked the shadow guard to bring the abortion medicine, and without saying anything, she aborted the child and pushed the blame to Nalan Ing. Mo Ye's only prince, the Nalan family was like a defeated army. Even the general Nalan Wei, who had a lot of achievements, couldn't escape the fate of being beheaded. In the darkness, he walked towards her step by step. He reached out and hugged her pale face, trembling as he cried. After a long time, he asked in a low voice, "Do you love me?" Actually, how could she not feel the pain of losing her child? That was their flesh and blood, an innocent life that had yet to be born. She clenched her teeth and couldn't hold back her tears. Her usual soft and delicate voice was replaced with only sadness as she said, "I did." In the past, she had loved, waited, believed, and missed him. But now, all that was left was hatred. "Why can't we go back to the past? Why can't you love me again?" Silence, silence, silence. A long silence ensued. She closed her eyes. The moment she opened them, her tone returned to normal. She softly murmured, "Chinchia has always loved your majesty." The strength in his arms was like a deflated balloon, but he still hugged her tightly in the next second. The guilt in his heart was magnified infinitely. If the original owner's family hadn't died, even if she didn't love him, he might have loved someone else. But because his entire family died, he couldn't jump out of this box and slowly sank. Mo Ye's 12th year, the court was stable. The original owner already had half of the Mo dynasty's power, so it was normal for her to meddle in court politics. Chapter 2264. She didn't eat much because she was always afraid that she would get fat and become ugly. But when she was too thin, she would eat like crazy. Even if her stomach hurt, she didn't care at all. She always maintained herself in the most perfect state, presenting herself in front of him. These 10 long years, she felt tired, but she kept persevering. All the people who heard her back then were already dead, except for Mo Yi and Feng Ling Er. She had asked Feng Ling Er several times where she was, but Mo Yi didn't answer. He didn't want her to see that woman again. He didn't want to mention her sadness. But in fact, her sadness had never healed. It just festered slowly in the long years. In Mo Ye's 15th year, Mo Ye's body was not as good as before. He would wake up coughing in the middle of the night, his face getting uglier. The sachet used to be changed every year, but now it's changed every 3 months. She always said with a smile, "The peach blossoms are blooming well this summer, so I made one more for His Majesty. In fact, it's just increasing the poison." In addition, the original host would brew medicine for him every day, but she added some more ingredient. Now she could already stand firm in the Mo dynasty. She didn't need Mo Yi anymore. For her, perhaps Mo Yi being alive was the biggest threat to her. In Mo Ye's 16th year, he couldn't get out of bed and always move. Occasionally, he liked to let her stay by his side, looking at her deeply, and then gently touching her head. He liked to look at her like this, but he knew he didn't have much time. At the end of Mo Ye's 16th year, he slept most of the time. Occasionally, he opened his eyes, always frantically looking for her voice. She probably calculated the days, and he was about to die. These days, he didn't go to the court anymore, and spent most of his time with her. Inside and outside the palace, people were talking about her virtue. It was the Mo dynasty's blessing that the current emperor could marry such a woman. Occasionally, a few words would reach Mo Ye's ears. He would always be very happy to hear it. Even if he could barely sit up, he would personally reward the people who brought these rumors. At this point in the story, the original owner's memory began to blank out. Luo Qingchen couldn't accept the later memories, and didn't know how the original owner died. However, she thought that Mo Yi was probably dead. After all, the combination of the two poisons had already invaded his internal organs. Death was already an inevitable thing. A host, have you accepted all the memories? Now I'll take you back to 3 days before the original owner died. The host? The original owner and the male lead died at the same time. If you reverse time in this ending, you will gain all the experience points. Unseal the memory that originally belonged to you. Would you let me off so easily? If the host fails, the host will enter the second spacetime, which is 1,000 years later. Luo Qingchen expresses that she has just accepted such a heavy memory. Suddenly, he had to enter this world by himself. His heart was filled with fear and unease. The original owner's thoughts continued to infect her, making her feel like she was suffocating. Favorable impression points. The male lead's favorability towards the original owner is 50%. So little? In the end, it's more guilt. The system said it very tactfully, but Luo Qingchen could roughly understand. When Mo Yi was at his loneliest, the original owner resolutely stood by his side. And when the original owner needed help the most, Mo Yi wasn't there. Some knots were destined to never be untied. Not related to life and death, who would be afraid of death. Chapter 2265. Early winter. Snowflakes the size of goose feathers fell from the sky. She narrowed her eyes, her heart filled with mixed feelings. She couldn't say she liked him, but she also couldn't say she disliked him. She wore a dark purple soft silver lily dress, her long fine black hair was inserted with a beaded flower hairpin. Standing in the snow, she looked especially elegant and refined. The path she took in the palace every day was the same, passing through the imperial garden full of plum blossoms. On the left was the Hall of Supreme Harmony where morning court was held, and on the right was Mo Yi's palace. These days, his body was getting worse and worse. He almost never got out of bed. When Luo Qingchen walked to his side step by step, his eyelids moved, but he never opened his eyes. She was guarding him like this, knowing when he would return. She went to the library to read some information about poisons. This kind of slow-acting poison was called gu, something from the Phoenix dynasty. The current Mo Yi was already beyond cure, there was no cure. Luo Qingchen put down the book and took a deep breath, her eyes slightly red. No way, no way, no way. She had no way to change the outcome, she could only wait for his death. That was really a suffocating matter. 3 days later, winter solstice. Mo Yi's personal eunuch Li came to Glimmer Hall to find her, bringing her the news that Mo Yi had woken up. This might be the last time he would wake up. You came. His voice was very soft, as if he didn't have much strength, but he reached out to grab her wrist. At that time, he was the most handsome man in the entire Mo dynasty. But now, his temples were already gray. The palace maid brought the medicine. She gently shook her head and said, "Take it away." Now, whether he drank it or not, it didn't seem important. But he opened his eyes and said in a spoiled manner, "This is the only thing you made for me, you must drink it." She didn't reply, only watching him drink the medicine, then leaned heavily on her shoulder. The cold wind blew in from outside the window. Her body slightly trembled, suddenly feeling a bit scared. She saw him strenuously pick up the quilt and wrap her up. "After I leave, you have to take good care of yourself. Eat whatever you want. If you're full, don't force yourself. Don't be afraid, I've already taken care of everything, including the personal guards that you're most worried about. Your Majesty, don't speak nonsense." She forced herself to speak in a gentle voice, but her heart twitched and she felt extremely uncomfortable. "I'm dying, I know." He slowly raised his hand, and his slightly cold voice carried a touch of floating. He gently touched her face and said, "Don't be afraid, no one can bully you anymore." Luo Qingchen's eyes trembled. She wanted to say something, but she didn't dare to open her mouth. With such a sorrowful atmosphere surrounding her, she was afraid that she would burst into tears the moment she opened her mouth. Although it was the original owner's story, at this moment, she felt as if she was experiencing it herself. It was so sad. "Girl, I'm sorry." His voice trembled, as if he was using the last of his strength to speak into her ear. "I might not be able to repay what I owe you in this lifetime. If there's a next life—" He paused for a moment, and his voice was choked with sobs. He buried himself in her arms and said, "I'm here for you, okay? Next life, next life, next life." What a distant promise. If they couldn't complete it with all their strength in this lifetime, what use would there be in the next life? "You answer me." After a moment of silence, he spoke with difficulty, as if he was waiting for her answer. He owed her too much. The guilt made him unable to like anyone else, unable to love anyone else. In the end, there had to be an ending. Chapter 2266. Luo Qingchen could feel the person leaning on her slowly fall asleep. No, he should be dead. The snow outside the window drifted in little by little, bringing with it a touch of coldness. She lowered her head and gently hugged Mo Yi. She didn't know what to say, whether to cry or to calm down. In her blank mind, the system's voice slowly sounded. "Because the host's first space failed, you can now choose whether to enter the second space." The system's voice was very deep, not as playful as it was before. Probably also knew that she was in a bad mood. "The space-time transition will take place 1 day later at this hour. The host can take care of the following funeral matters." After Mo Ye's death, the entire country mourned. The entire Mo dynasty was under her control. She recommended several ministers who supported the country and gave the throne to Mo Lin. That was Mo Ye's youngest nephew, and also his only surviving nephew. She brought Mo Ye's cenotaph back to Shimmer Palace and placed 2 jars of his favorite peach blossom wine in front of him. Everything seemed so peaceful. The palace maids and servants didn't know what she wanted to do, but Mo Ye's personal eunuch knew a thing or two. Just now, this servant saw the Empress find someone to get some kerosene. He paused and looked at her with an aged expression on his wrinkled face. His Majesty only wanted the best for the Empress in his life. His Majesty put the Empress first in everything. This servant has seen so many people, but I've never seen someone as infatuated as His Majesty. Luo Qingchen pursed her lips and nodded faintly. "I know. So the Empress can't." He sighed softly. "The Empress, you must live well for His Majesty." She didn't say anything else and walked towards the cenotaph. Sitting down cross-legged, she closed her eyes and slowly said, "You may leave." With a deep sigh, the eunuch slowly retreated. She opened a jar of wine and took a sip. The air was filled with the faint fragrance of peach blossoms, intoxicating. "Then let's meet again in 1,000 years. I wonder if you'll still remember me." She took another sip and took out a basin of kerosene and a flamethrower from an exquisite box at the side. "I hope that the scenery there is beautiful. I hope that the story there is moving. I hope that there is no more sadness there." She closed her eyes and blew out the tongue of flame. She loosened her fingers and slowly let it fall. In an instant, the surroundings were ablaze. She gently picked up the cenotaph and hugged it to her chest, waiting for the time to travel. The entire palace instantly fell into another uproar, but she seemed to be unable to hear anything. Glimmer Palace, what a nice name. Then, she would just end it where it started. There were no ifs in this period of time. She would decide the ending of the story. Countless clamorous noises rang in his ears. It seemed like there were people constantly rushing in. The fire was very big, blinding his eyes. "We don't owe each other anything. How about we start from the beginning?" Even if she came, she would be the female lead. In that case, all the love and hatred in the past would disappear with death. No one was wrong, whether it was Mo Yi or the host. What was wrong was fate. They met at the wrong time, so they wouldn't have a good ending. Then 1,000 years later, at least they would meet at the right time. Ding! Congratulations to the host for entering the second space. The male lead no longer has the memories of the past life, and the host has all the memories. Time. Chapter 2267. Ching Er has already been asleep for 14 years. You said that she would wake up when she was 14 years old. Now that it's almost over, why is Ching Er still asleep? The white-clothed man standing to the side frowned slightly. His white face revealed a cold aura, but it hindered his indescribable appearance. Proud and handsome. He slowly raised his right hand, pinched his fingers, and said, "The laws of heaven, the reincarnation of all things, the divination shouldn't be wrong. But when I went to the Snow Lotus ice cellar today, she was still asleep. No matter how much I talked to her, she didn't respond. The time of awakening might not be so accurate. Your Majesty can wait a few more days." Mo Yi slightly nodded, his clear eyes carrying a dark light. Your Majesty, the princess is awake." The man in the dragon robe was excited and immediately said, "Quick, quick, quick, bring me to see her." Luo Yu, the current emperor, had a position above tens of thousands of people, and was very infatuated with love. In his life, he only loved one person, and that was his only empress, Feng Xian. But he and the empress were inseparable day and night, and only had one daughter, Luo Qinchen. But the sad thing was, this girl fell into a deep sleep from the day she was born. She was only in a deep sleep, but she didn't die. Even her eating, drinking, and defecating could be taken care of by palace maids, no different from normal. Her appearance became more and more beautiful day by day, but she just couldn't wake up. Just as Luo Yu was in despair, Mo Yi appeared. He claimed to be a heaven's fate master, proficient in yin and yang and the 5 elements, and protected the heavenly fate. He told Luo Yu that Miss Luo would wake up when she was 14 years old. Luo Yu was very happy after hearing this news, and let Mo Yi stay in the palace. He rewarded her with 10,000 taels of gold and silver, and wanted to give her a promotion. But he rejected all of these. He said that he only wanted one person, and that was the Empress' younger sister, Feng Ling Er. The name Feng Ling Er could be said to be very famous in Chang'an City. Before Feng Xian married the current emperor, she was already famous in Chang'an City, and was the first singer in Chang'an City. She had once performed the rainbow dress dance in the dark night, which made countless officials and nobles submit to her. However, she was undisciplined by nature. The men beside her always had one, but none of them could enter her eyes. She was proud and indulgent. The more no one dared to do something, the more she wanted to try it. In the deep winter, everyone wore brocade and cotton-padded jackets, but she liked to wear transparent white gauze. Her graceful figure and enchanting makeup often charmed all the men on Chang'an Street. Of course, such a woman could enter the eyes of men, but it was very difficult for her to enter the eyes of women. After all, over the years, Feng Ling Er's reputation in Chang'an was mostly debauched and vulgar, except for her superb singing and dancing skills. But because she was a relative of the royal family, the commoners couldn't say much. However, where there were people, there would always be right and wrong. There would always be 1 or 2 sentences that would reach Luo Yu's ears. Therefore, he did not like Feng Ling Er very much. It was just that his empress doted on her younger sister. Although there were many people who asked for her marriage these years, as the emperor, he did not agree to any of them. Now, for the sake of their only daughter, he naturally agreed to Mo Yi. Chapter 2268. What position does the emperor wish to bestow upon me? Mo Yi narrowed his eyes, a trace of coldness appearing between his brows. What position does young Master Mo want? You can tell me directly. Luo Yu was very straightforward, allowing him to choose for himself. After all, if his precious daughter could wake up, any gold or silver position would mean nothing. Mo Yi narrowed his eyes and said, "How about being a winemaker? Why would you want such an occupation?" Luo Yu was naturally very shocked. After all, being a winemaker was only a 7th-ranked official in the palace. Although it was easy, it did not have much power. He did not understand why Mo Yi clearly intended to stay in the palace, but when faced with the emperor, he did not boldly request for a better position. Mo Yi heard that Miss Ling has always liked to drink wine, especially when she sings or dances. Because of this, he wants to become a winemaker. He had always loved peach blossoms since he was young. There was no reason for it. You are very thoughtful. Luo Yu stroked his beard and nodded when he heard this. Furthermore, he promised that if the princess woke up, he would grant him another wish as long as his wish was fulfilled. Host has arrived at the second spacetime. When the system's mechanical voice sounded in her ears, she slowly opened her eyes. She saw that her surroundings were covered in ice and snow. She was lying on an ice bed, surrounded by 7 to 8 palace maids and eunuchs. They were all staring at her with wide eyes. Their expressions seemed to be excited, but she could not hear what they were saying clearly. She frowned slightly and wanted to slowly raise her hand, but found that she did not have any strength. After a while, a supreme being wearing a dragon robe rushed in. Behind him were 2 imperial physicians holding sandalwood chests. The surrounding sounds seemed to gradually become clearer. The noisy chatter was like a shock wave that continuously entered her ears. She only frowned and looked around. There was not a single familiar face. Luo dynasty. The emperor in front of her seemed a little familiar, but he was not similar to official Luo from before. He was more good-natured, with more gentleness in his eyes. Quick, take the princess's pulse. Yes, your majesty. Princess? Luo Qingqian's mind was spinning rapidly. Even if it was the Luo dynasty, it was not surprising that she was a princess. Looking at the emperor's anxious look, her status shouldn't be low. It seems that the story of the second universe seems to be a little better for her. At least in terms of status, she didn't lose to anyone. Although Her Royal Highness has awakened, her body is still very weak. The imperial physician said, she should be transferred to a warm place. This humble subject will brew the medicine. Go. Luo Yu ordered twice and immediately sat beside Luo Qingqian. He gently held her hand and said, Qing don't worry, I'm your father. I won't be cold anymore. His eyes were slightly red, which did not match the cold dragon robe on his body at all. All of a sudden, even though she was in a world of ice and snow, she felt exceptionally warm. Yes. She nodded. Her voice was very soft, but she used all of her strength. When Luo Yu heard this, she was so excited that she almost cried. She was escorted into a magnificent bedchamber. When she passed through the door, she slightly nodded her head and looked at the plaque. There were 3 big words written on it, Glimmer Palace. It seems that where it began was where it ended. Then where it ended was where it began. Chapter 2269. The first day after she woke up, she didn't see anyone other than her father and mother. Because she didn't have the original owner's memories, she didn't know anything about the story of this world. Luo Qingqian could only find out about this world from the palace maids, as well as the simple power of the court and the harem. Of course, there were also the names that had already been engraved in her mind. For example, Mo Yi. For example, Feng Ling Heir. Fate was really strange. 1,000 years ago, Feng Ling Heir was a princess, but 1,000 years later, she was a princess. Moreover, her identity was very awkward. She was her mother's little sister. In terms of seniority, she probably had to address her as auntie. She didn't know if the grudges from 1,000 years ago should be brought to the future. But even if they weren't enemies, they could never become friends. As for Mo Yi, she accidentally heard from the palace maids that he was a heaven's fate master. She had been asleep for 14 years. When she woke up, he had calculated that it was just right. Only, she heard that he had a condition, which was to enter the palace and become a wine maker. She didn't know why Mo Yi chose such a position. Not only did it not match his identity in this world, it also didn't match his identity in his previous life. After traveling through 1,000 years, she saw Emoyi again in the afternoon 3 days later. She was wearing pearl cotton shoes and holding a walking stick. She was wearing a pomegranate red brocade embroidered with flowers and butterflies. She came to the back garden by herself. Stepping on the vast expanse of white snow, one would feel a kind of soft cotton, but after a few seconds, one would feel a burst of heart-piercing cold. Her body wasn't good. Probably because she had been lying down for too long, she would gasp for breath every few steps. The palace maids would always fight to help her. If she didn't get any exercise, she wouldn't make any progress. Suddenly, a cold wind blew. She narrowed her eyes and used all her strength to stagger back with her walking stick. Just as she was about to fall into the snow, a warm hand wrapped around her waist. There was a faint fragrance in the air, as well as a familiar scent. She nodded abruptly, and what entered her eyes was that familiar face. The reflection of the white snow was so beautiful that it was indescribable. At this moment, she was inexplicably nervous. She wanted to rely on her own strength to stand up, but found that she couldn't muster any strength at all. "Your Highness." He bent down slightly and picked her up by the waist. His voice carried a touch of coldness as he said, "Your Highness' body is still not suitable for walking around." She was only 14 years old, so she looked very small in front of him. When he carried her in his arms, he felt like they were a big brother and a little sister. "I just came to take a look at the scenery." Luo Qingchen blinked her eyes in a panic and said, "The plum blossoms in winter are always very beautiful. Plum wine tastes even better." He chuckled. "Miss Feng likes it very much." Feng Ling air. She silently muttered these 3 words in her heart and felt an inexplicable feeling of suffocation. Could it be that he really stayed in the palace for Feng Ling air? Why? Feng Ling air's reputation was so bad, so why did Emoyi stay in the palace for her? He didn't care that he went from being an aloof Heaven's Fate master to a wine maker with almost no status. Seeing her lower her head and not say anything, he suddenly said, Perhaps your Highness doesn't know, but Miss Feng is the Empress' little sister, which is your concubine mother. When your body is better, the Empress will tell you about the matters in the palace." Chapter 2270. She had thought of 10,000 opportunities for them to meet again, but she had never thought that it would end like this. The current Emoyi felt very unfamiliar to her. It was probably because whether it was her memories or the Emoyi she saw in her eyes. His pitch-black eyes could always reflect her figure. But right now, she felt that those beautiful eyes were filled with an indescribable darkness, as well as an indescribable complex emotion. After she said that she did not want to hear, Emoyi did not say anything else. He just quietly hugged her as they passed through the imperial garden. The plum blossom petals fluttered down, bringing with them a faint desolation. Returning to Shimmer Hall, she thought about it and felt that her words had been too stiff. After sitting down, she looked at him and said, "Young Master Emo, I was a bit impatient with my words just now. I still have to thank young Master for sending me back. Protecting the princess' safety is the right thing to do. It is also the responsibility of every servant in the palace." His words were very polite, but they made people feel distant and unfamiliar. "I heard that young Master Emo is a Heaven's Mandate master. I don't know why you like this palace and want to become a winemaker." She was beating around the bush to confirm the doubts in her heart. Did he really like winemaking or was it for Feng Ling air? She could not believe those rumors. As long as he said that he did not believe it, she would not believe it. After all, this man clearly knew that someone was plotting against him 1,000 years ago, but even in the end, he was still willing to endure it. Time passed, 1,000-year love. Even though 1,000 years had passed, even though he no longer had those memories sealed in the depths of his mind. But she did not believe that before meeting her, knowing her, and understanding her, he would fall in love with Feng Ling air. She did not believe it. This one only heard that young Lady Feng likes fruit wine, so I came to the palace to find a position to make some good wine for her. Luo Qingchen did not know what kind of reaction she had. She just stood there in a daze, unable to say a single word. This continued until Eunuch Li walked in to pass on a message for Feng Ling Er. It seemed that the plum wine that Mo Yi had brewed for her last night was to her liking, so she summoned him to the Hall of Moonlight. "Your Highness, I will take my leave now." He cupped his hands and bowed, as if he had received some incredible good news. He was full of anticipation and didn't want to stay for even a moment longer. Young Master Mo, Luo Qingchen pursed her lips, her clear eyes flashing with unwillingness. This was the first time she had this kind of feeling. She was standing in the same position as the female supporting character, and saying those bad things about the female lead. She had never been in such a position before, and it did not feel good. Although I haven't been awake for long, I occasionally heard from the palace maids that Feng Ling, concubine Feng, suffered a stroke in Chang'an City. "Why, Your Highness, she is your aunt." Mo Yi directly interrupted her, a faint dark light flashing in his deep eyes. His thin lips softly said, "No matter what others say about her, you can't say that. Such a young face, such clear eyes, should not be mixed with these messy things." But for Luo Qingchen, these words were so heavy that her nose turned sour and she almost cried. For someone like her who had a complete memory, for the more than 100 lives of the Luo family engraved in her mind. Their lives were too light, and their souls were too heavy. They had long forgotten the memories from 1,000 years ago, but she had not. Chapter 2271. After a while, the corners of Luo Qingchen's lips rose slightly. She pulled out a faint bitter smile and said, "Since young Master Mo has said this, what should I say? Princess, rest well. This humble servant will go to the Moonlight Palace first to prevent Miss Feng from waiting too long." He still cupped his hands. His tone was just as humble as before, but there was a hint of anxiousness. "I won't send you off." Luo Qingchen's cold eyes narrowed. She turned around and was unwilling to say another word. Didn't they say that she would write the story? Why didn't Mo Yi give her the chance? Could it be that she was just a passerby in 1,000 years of time? Or did she have to see with her own eyes how Mo Yi fell in love with Feng Ling Er? She really didn't dare believe that a man who gave everything like this would bury his guilt deep in his heart. In another time and space, he would go in the opposite direction from her. Mo Yi was clearly stunned for a moment. His brows furrowed slightly, and a faint ripple appeared in his deep, ink-like eyes. Only he knew that his heart was inexplicably moved. "This humble servant will leave." These were the last 2 sentences they said when they first met. "I won't send you off. This humble servant will leave." In the next half a month, they didn't see each other again. She heard that Feng Ling Er liked Mo Yi's wine very much. She would often dance in her Moonlight Palace when she drank too much. She wore light muslin and thin clothes, enchanting and charming. The rumors in the palace gradually spread to Luo Qingchen's ears. They were more or less unpleasant to hear. For example, she saw Feng Ling Er dance for the winemaker Mo Yi. For example, they had long been intimate. But Luo Qingchen was very clear that Mo Yi had never stayed overnight in the Moonlight Palace, not even once. Even though he went to the Moonlight Palace frequently, the time he stayed was very short. She knew this, but she didn't understand it. She never went to see Feng Ling Er. Feng Ling Er also never came to see her. She was hostile, full of hostility. But she kept telling herself, "Don't worry, don't worry. Don't worry about it." Because she had been lying in bed for 16 years, her reflexes were very slow. She would feel tired after taking a few more steps. It was late winter, and it was snowing heavily every day. The palace maids were afraid that she would catch a cold, so they wrapped her in a thick coat before letting her go out. She liked to sit in the Drunken Dream Pavilion in the Imperial Garden the most, because this was the place Mo Yi had to pass by on his way to the Hall of Moonlight. Every day when the sun set, Mo Yi would come out of the Moonlight Palace and pass by the Imperial Garden. The warm light shone on his stunning side profile, making him look so beautiful. Luo Qingchen would always sit in the pavilion of drunken dreams and take a few more glances at him. Looking at his current youthful appearance, she would always think of that winter solstice day when he was on the verge of death. Every time she recalled this scene, she would tell herself that she could still persevere. If God did not give her the so-called love at first sight, then he would have to work hard to make her see him. Such an outstanding Luo Qingchen. Because of this, she personally planned a vulgar and unbearable scene, such as those fainting scenes that would happen in the depths of the palace. Since her body was delicate and weak, pretending to faint on such a cold day shouldn't be too clumsy. Everything was ready. She wore a plain white pleated dress with flowers and held an ink-colored umbrella in her hand, standing in the center of the Imperial Garden. Because of half a month of hard work, she could no longer hold a cane, but standing for a long time still made her feel strained. Chapter 2272. 1, 2, 3. She counted for 3 seconds in her heart. The moment she saw his figure, her body went soft and she fainted on the ground without saying a word. An anxious shout suddenly sounded in her ears, "Your Highness!" Luo Qingchen's heart was filled with joy. She had the feeling of Jiang Taigong fishing, the willing ones are hooked. After all, she still caught Mo Ye's attention. He quickly ran to her and sat down on the cold snow. He gently held her in his arms and anxiously said, "Your Highness, can you hear me?" Luo Qingchen rolled her eyes and pretended to frown in pain. She muttered, "I'm just a bit dizzy. I suddenly don't have any strength." Her voice was very soft. She tried her best to lower her voice so that the other side could feel her weakness. Mo Yi frowned. His right hand gently touched her forehead. His cool and pleasant voice slowly came, "You have a fever. I'll take you back to your room first." "Fever? Is this true?" "Young Master Mo Yi, I'm just pretending to faint, okay?" Probably because she was dizzy, this time Mo Yi did not princess carry her. Instead, he carefully carried her on his back. His shoulders were very broad, and there was a kind of thick warmth. She always felt that lying on his shoulders made her feel like she could fall into a deep sleep. Peace of mind and warmth. After an unknown amount of time, she heard the sound of urgent footsteps. She felt cold and hot all over and her back was covered in cold sweat. She was just pretending to faint, so why did she feel so uncomfortable? After an unknown amount of time, someone fed her a bowl of extremely bitter medicine. After swallowing it with difficulty, a pair of familiar hands touched her lips and fed her a peach blossom fruit. The fruit was very sweet and had the fragrance of peach blossoms. It completely covered the bitterness in her mouth. This night, she slept very well. This sleep was very peaceful. When she woke up again, it was still night. The moment she opened her eyes, she saw Mo Yi standing not far away. This time, he wore a moon-white robe and stood in front of the window with his hands clasped behind his back. His tall and straight figure made people feel lonely. Luo Qingchen felt her body was very light. She rolled her eyes and sat up on her own. She blinked her eyes and said, "Young Master Mo." Mo Yi was slightly taken aback. He abruptly turned around and narrowed his eyes at her. He leaned against the moonlight, his deep eyes bottomless. A few seconds later, he hurriedly walked towards her and stopped very close to her. He reached out and touched her forehead. "Your fever is finally gone. How many hours have I slept?" Luo Qingchen frowned, feeling a little embarrassed. It was clearly a script that he had written himself. Why did it suddenly go astray? "Her Highness has already slept for 3 days and 3 nights. Mo Yi sighed. His eyes flashed with worry as he said, "You were in a daze and refused to take your medicine, so I brought you some candied fruits." "Peach blossom-flavored candied fruits?" Luo Qingchen pursed her lips, recalling the taste of her sleep. Mo Yi heard this and said with a gentle smile, "You actually remember it clearly." "Of course." Luo Qingchen proudly raised her brows and said, "My memory is very good. But this humble one remembers telling the princess not long ago that you have just recovered from a serious illness, so you can't walk around in this cold weather." Mo Yi paused and said, "I don't know if the princess still remembers." "Yes." Coo. Luo Qingchen cleared her throat and said, "That is all in the past, so let's not talk about it. How about we talk about something else?" Chapter 2273. Luo Qingchen thought about it and her lips curled into a faint smile as she said, "I don't know why, but I suddenly want to drink wine. I wonder if young Master Mo's wine is really that good? To make concubine Mother Feng like it that much." She had been in this world for a while, but she still hadn't seen Feng Ling Air. She heard that there were guests coming to her moonlight palace every day. Every night there was music that filled the northeast corner of the palace. What kind of wine does the princess want to drink? Mo Yi looked at her tender cheeks and clear eyes. He felt an inexplicable throbbing in his heart, but he hid this throbbing in the bottom of his heart and didn't tell anyone else. Peach blossom wine. Does young Master Mo know how to make it? Luo Qingchen looked at his handsome face and memories of the past slowly appeared in her mind. In a lonely and quiet corner of the palace, there was a peach blossom tree that wasn't too tall or too short. With a gentle breeze, the peach blossom petals slowly fell down. A pot of wine was raised as they looked at each other. "But it isn't the season for peach blossoms." Mo Yi narrowed his eyes and said, "But if the princess wants to drink, this humble servant naturally has a way." When he said this, the originally dim light in his eyes suddenly flashed with a bright light. At this moment, she heard the system prompt that she hadn't heard for a long time. "Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 10%. The system wouldn't lie. Although she felt that she was still very far from him, this prompt told her that at least he still put her in his heart. Actually, thinking about it, they had already done quite a bit. The first time was an accident and the second time was deliberate. Although the script wasn't as perfect as she imagined, it wasn't as bleak as it seemed. "Your Highness, the seventh Mama of the Moonlight Palace is here to see you." The maid's voice interrupted their conversation. Luo Qingchen slightly knit her brows as her heart filled with dissatisfaction. "Let her wait outside." She narrowed her eyes and her voice had a trace of coldness to it. The maid rarely saw Luo Qingchen like this, so she quickly moved back and said, "Yes." When she slowly left the room, Mo Yi finally said, "Although the princess fever is gone, you still have to drink the medicine. If you feel it's bitter, you can eat 2 more peach blossom candies." When he said this, it was like a big brother talking to a little sister. Reminding and reminding. It was as if they had met for the first time 1,000 years ago. She was 7 years old, and he was 14. Now she was 14 years old, but she was still a child in his eyes. That impeccable face was filled with gentleness and gentleness, as if an elder was looking at a junior. She didn't like this feeling. In terms of seniority, she was someone who had lived for over 1,000 years. She either liked it or she didn't like it. She didn't need her brother's care for her sister. Mo Yi, do you like Feng Ling? For such a direct host, even the system took in a cold breath. She was a direct person like this. She always followed the principle of using her hands and not her mouth to deal with people she hated. As for the person she liked, since she could get the answer, why would she hesitate? It really wasn't her style and she didn't like it. Mo Yi was stunned. His deep eyes looked at her for a while before he said, "I have no power or influence, how could I have the right to admire Miss Feng?" Luo Qingchen knew that he wanted to avoid it, but she didn't plan on giving him a chance to change the topic. Chapter 2274. The surrounding air seemed to freeze at this moment, and it was terrifyingly silent. "I wonder what kind of liking Princess is talking about?" Mo Yi narrowed his eyes, and his beautiful eyes flickered with a faint light. It was as if his entire body was filled with a dangerous aura, mysterious and steady. This feeling was very strange, and Luo Qingchen couldn't figure it out in a short time. I'm talking about. Just as she was about to speak, a sharp voice interrupted her. Your Highness Princess, Seventh Mama requests an audience with Your Highness Princess. Princess, this servant told her not to come in, but she knit her brows and her eyes were cold. Looking at the arrogant Seventh Mama, she snorted, Kneel down? Seventh Mama was stunned. She clearly didn't expect Luo Qingchen to speak to her like this. She could be considered an old person in the palace. Following by Feng Ling Heir's side for many years, she could be considered to have some status. This princess had been asleep for 14 years, and had just woken up. She didn't expect her to be so domineering. She pursed her lips and unwillingly knelt down, her eyes filled with disdain. It seems you still don't understand the situation you're facing. Luo Qingchen's voice was very cold, and every word carried a chill. She looked at her and said, I'm Imperial Father's only child, and my body isn't very good. Now that you've trespassed into Glimmer Palace and worsened the princess's condition, what do you think your punishment should be? Hiss. The two little palace maids standing next to her sucked in a breath of cold air. After their princess woke up, her temper was very good. She had always been very gentle and kind to servants like them. This was the first time they saw her fierce appearance. In those clear and moving eyes there was a faint killing intent. Seventh Mama swallowed her saliva, clearly a little nervous. She knew the princess's identity, but she was used to being arrogant in the palace. She hadn't met any fierce characters, so she was naturally a little arrogant. Your Highness Princess, this servant knows her mistake. But Miss Feng has ordered young Master Mo to go to Moonlight Palace. Although she lowered her head and admitted defeat, Luo Qingchen knew that she was still a little unhappy. It wasn't a complete fear, but rather a forced attitude, which made her feel uncomfortable. The next second, she snorted coldly and narrowed her eyes. It seems that you still don't understand. She slowly walked forward and stood in front of her. She raised her chin so that her arrogant eyes were at the same level as her. She sneered and said, If I faint here now, your entire family will be buried with me. Swish, swish, swish. No one knew if it was a coincidence or if it was done on purpose, but a gust of cold wind blew past and directly blew the west window open. The cold wind blew up her white dress and her fine black hair, bringing with it waves of coldness. Against the light, she could feel that Seventh Mama's face instantly paled and her lips were devoid of blood. A few seconds later, she seemed to come back to her senses. She hurriedly kowtowed and said, Your Highness, please spare my life. Your Highness, please spare my life. Scram. Her words were concise and comprehensive, without the slightest trace of emotion in her tone. Seventh Mama staggered back and scrambled out of Shimmer Palace. She could clearly feel the coldness and killing intent that Luo Qingchen transmitted to her. It was as if she stayed for a few more seconds, her life would end here. Luo Qingchen withdrew her gaze and looked at Emoyi. From beginning to end, he hadn't said a single word. He only used a probing gaze to look at her. Chapter 2275. Is it because you have a new level of respect for me? Luo Qingchen sneered. The moment she looked up, she met his deep eyes. Actually, when she said this, her tone was mocking. Half of it was mocking herself, and the other half was mocking Emoyi. She didn't know what she was mocking. Perhaps it was because the beginning of the story wasn't so good. No. It's very imposing. After a long time, Emoyi chuckled. There was a faint light in his eyes as he said, I didn't expect such a small body to have so much power. So don't treat me like a child, I'm not. Luo Qingchen looked at him very seriously and said, I've stopped being a child a long time ago. Emoyi looked at her like this for a long time. Finally, he said, the peach blossom wine will be sent to the princess in 3 days, but you can't drink too much. I can promise you the latter. Luo Qingchen looked up, a faint smile on her lips as she said, the former won't do. What does princess mean? Tomorrow. Luo Qingqian's eyes trembled as she said, "Young Master Mo can send concubine Feng different flavors of fruit wine every day. Then one day should be enough." He frowned, but didn't say anything. Luo Qingqian continued, "You'll belong to me tomorrow." He still frowned, then said, "All right." The next morning, she woke up very early. Her appetite was very good, and she ate twice as much breakfast as usual. The palace maids stood to the side, full of joy as they said, "Princess's complexion is much better. As servants, we are also very happy." Luo Qingqian chuckled and said, "You all have sweet mouths. It's probably because the princess showed off her power yesterday. The energy that was originally settled in her dantian was released, and her spirit came up." When Luo Qingqian heard this, she thought, "Little sisters, do you think this is a cultivation plane? But I heard yesterday, seventh Mama went back and complained to Miss Feng. She said it was the first time in her life that she was humiliated in front of a junior. Junior? Only she can say that." Another palace maid added, "In the palace, regardless of age, we are all servants. The princess is the master. How can there be any humiliation? Isn't it? Sure enough, like master, like servant." Luo Qingqian coldly snorted and said, "She doesn't even have the qualifications to be my servant. The servants of our Glimmer Palace Hall are all beautiful and cute." But reasonably speaking, this person called Seventh Mama was also arrogant enough. She clearly knew that she was the only princess of the current emperor, yet she still dared to be so rash in front of her. It seemed that Feng Ling Air usually indulged her. Otherwise, she wouldn't be so unruly. Even so, she wanted to see what Feng Ling Air was like in this world. Before that, she wanted to drink a cup of peach blossom wine that belonged to her. In the evening, Mo Yi arrived as promised. He was holding a small jar of peach blossom wine and 2 cups. The refreshing peach blossom fragrance instantly awakened her taste bud. She slowly walked forward and looked up with a smile. It seems that young Master Mo is indeed a genius at brewing wine. This peach blossom wine must be very delicious. She was about to reach out to take it, but the other side withdrew his hand. Because of the difference in height, Luo Qingqian couldn't reach it even if she stood on tiptoe. The next second, she said in a somewhat angry voice, "Young Master Mo is really interesting? This peach blossom wine has already been delivered, but you're still not willing to give it up." Mo Yi looked at her childish expression and sighed with his right hand. He couldn't help but pinch her nose and said, "Remember the ladder you promised me." As soon as his voice fell, he handed the jar of peach blossom wine to her. There was a faint trace of affection in his eyes. Chapter 2276. There was wine, peach blossoms, and affection. Suddenly, she felt that her mood was exceptionally good. The haze that had been hidden in her heart for the past few days had completely disappeared. It was like the iron tree in her heart had bloomed. "Since there's good wine, why don't we choose a beautiful place to enjoy the scenery?" Luo Qingqian shook the peach blossom wine in her hand and her lips couldn't help revealing a smile. Mo Yi thought for a bit and said, "Wear more clothes, it's snowing heavily outside." Actually, Luo Qingqian knew that there was no difference between this imperial palace and the one 1,000 years ago. Even the imperial garden was close to the Glimmer Palace, so she wanted to find it. She wanted to find the peach blossom tree where they had drunk wine together 1,000 years ago and admired the moon together. In the most southwest position, there was a small river and a water curtain next to a fake mountain. There was a bare tree that looked like an iron tree. Luo Qingqian slowly raised her head and looked around before saying, "It doesn't even bloom in the winter? How does your highness know what kind of tree this is?" Mo Ye's eyes were a bit surprised as he looked at her with a faint gaze. Luo Qingqian pursed her lips and 1,000 years of memories flashed in her mind. After a while, she said, "Perhaps I've been here before. Your eyes show that you've been here with a very important person before." Mo Ye's eyes were a bit dejected and his beautiful eyes revealed a bit of sadness as he said, "Is it someone you're thinking of?" Luo Qingchen heard this and her right hand gently brushed the snow. She leaned against a tree stump and said, "It can be considered that. Is the princess playing with Emoyi?" He sat down beside her and said with a soft laugh, "You slept for 14 years before waking up." Although he gave her an excuse, she still felt that the past was not to her liking. For some reason, she suddenly wanted to know who the person she was thinking of was, even if there was no such person. As a Heaven's Mandate Master, could it be that you don't believe in past and present life? Luo Qingchen poured a cup of wine and took a sip. The cause of the past life, the effect of the future. Past life and present life. His gaze was somewhat misty. He took Luo Qingchen's wine cup and drained it in one gulp. "Naturally, I believe." He was right. As a Heaven's Fate Master, how could he not believe in past and present lives? Perhaps it was because of this belief that there was an indelible hatred in his heart. She drank one cup after another, a faint blush on her fair cheeks. She didn't know if it was because her body was weak or for some other reason, but she actually started to feel intoxicated. Slightly drunk, Emoye's image became a little blurry. "So, this is how it feels to be drunk." It seemed to be not bad. "Your Highness," Emoye's pleasant voice resounded in her ears. The air was filled with the thick fragrance of peach blossom wine, and the white snow fell one by one, creating a beautiful scene. Luo Qingchen softly replied with a dazed smile. Emoyi looked at her like this, falling into a daze. Even his heart couldn't help wildly beating. "You're drunk. I know." She pursed her lips into a smile and said, "I'm a bit dizzy. Let's go back." Let's drink 2 more cups, be good." He rubbed her head with a pampering expression. She did not know if she was seeing things or not. "Emoyi, I don't know how to chase after a person. Can you help me tell him not to make me feel sad?" She softly grabbed his sleeve, like she was taking advantage of her drunkenness to say all the words in her heart. Emoye's expression was a bit stunned. After a while, he said, "The person your highness is thinking of?" "That's right." She nodded with a faint smile on her face. Chapter 2277. The snow seemed to have suddenly become heavier. He carried her step by step in the snow, the thick snow covering the deep footprints left behind by his boot. The light snowflakes fell bit by bit, landing on their hair. If they weren't careful, it was as if they had traveled through time and space, and their hair turned white. In a daze, she closed her eyes and gently patted his shoulder with a red face. He glanced sideways and met her half-closed eyes. She pouted and said with a silly smile, "Actually, I'm very scared. I'm scared that even though I tried my best, I still couldn't reach the ending I wanted. There were many things in the world that didn't go your way. After going through so many worlds, she should have already understood. It was just that this love had spanned over 1,000 years. Waiting and being waited for, loving and being loved, those words that couldn't be said not long ago, those responses that couldn't be received not long ago. She hoped that she could obtain all the answers here. What kind of ending do you want?" Emoyi naturally knew that she was drunk, so he asked this question. The restless words that were hidden in the depths of his heart could no longer be concealed under such a scene. That was the throbbing in the depths of his heart that no one knew about. He also knew that he had to stop here. No matter what kind of feelings he had, he should hide them all in the bottom of his heart and not tell anyone else. But at this moment, he suddenly wanted to be himself for once, be the real Emoyi for once. Luo Qingchen seriously thought about it when she heard this. She tilted her head and said, "Actually, you can also like me. Just once is enough. Maybe you'll find that I have a lot of good points." Actually, she didn't know what she was saying. She always felt like she was dreaming. The vast expanse of white was like a dream. She could say whatever she wanted. This place was like a secret little paradise. For example? Emoyi pulled her body and steadied his back. The corner of his mouth unconsciously rose into a warm smile. For example? She was stumped by his sudden question. After thinking for a long time, she said, "You're good looking. And you're beautiful. And you're beautiful." In the next second, he stopped. Once again, she turned her head to look at him. Her dark eyes revealed a faint glimmer of light as she said, "Turn around and take a look. Is it really that beautiful? Beautiful and beautiful?" He didn't use the word princess, but you. Hearing this, Luo Qingchen moved her body behind him and stretched her neck in a very difficult way. She looked at him and said, "Moyi, did you see it clearly?" When that pair of eyes that were as clear as water looked at him, Moyi felt an inexplicable burning flame in his heart, spreading all the coldness in his body. In an instant, his gaze landed on the most alluring features of her face. When the icy snow slowly landed on his lips, he lowered his head slightly and sealed it with a kiss. White snowflakes fell bit by bit. She gently closed her eyes, and her originally rapid heartbeat slowed down. Moye's kiss was light and gentle. It was like the kiss of an angel, shallow and deep, without any impatience at all. They were in a secluded place like this. He carried her and used a very beautiful method to kiss her. The snow fell, and as a destiny master, he named this moment as eternity. Ding, affection has increased by 10. Mission completion rate is now 30%. Wherever eternity goes, there is love. Born from love, it would never end.